I have to admit, I love compact lenses, especially when they perform brilliantly. In this video we take a look at the TTArtisan 75mm f2. This compact full-frame lens interested me because I would use it on a full-frame Nikon Z5 Mark II and an APS-C crop camera, in my case the Z52 and Z30 from Nikon. To be clear, TTArtisan was kind enough to send me this lens for a review, but they had no say in this video. Let's quickly see what this sub $200 lens has to offer. The TTArtisan 75mm f2 feels solid and is solidly built with a metal mount. If you place a Nikon against this, the huge difference in build quality and look and feel is very noticeable in favor of the TTArtisan. Somehow the TTArtisan 75mm f2 reminds me of the legendary Nikon 105mm AIS f2.5 with which the Afghan girl was photographed for National Geographic. There is a clickable aperturing on the TTArtisan that you have to set to A to be able to use the aperture dial on your camera. You receive a lens hood and both lens caps with this lens. The lens cap that you use on the back also functions as a dock to update your lens. Although you can only do this with a Windows computer. Bummer. The lens hood is rather fiddly and I will personally replace it with a metal screw copy that fits the build quality of the lens better, in my opinion. The rear lens cap also does not fit well on original Nikon lenses. It's a small detail, but I'm happy to share it with you. The lens has no weather sealing. Keep that in mind if you're considering using this lens in humid conditions. Of course, a lens review is about the image quality. Here I can tell you that I've come to surprising results. Nikon doesn't have a 75mm prime dedicated lens, but it does have an 85mm f1.8 and the 70-200mm f2.8 S lens. Because I have this zoom lens and I can use it at 75mm at f2.8, I'm going to throw it into the mix. Note that we're talking about a price difference of about $2,000 here. In this photo you can see that the TTArtisan renders the green foliage somewhat warmer than the Nikon. The Nikon shows a bit more blue in the green, while the TTArtisan adds a bit more yellow to the green. It's a matter of taste, but here I prefer the somewhat nostalgic color rendering of the TTArtisan over the clinical and sterile rendering of the Nikon at 75mm. These photos are obviously not going to win any prizes, but they do give a clear picture of how the lens behaves. The change from sharp to out of focus happens faster with the TTArtisan than with the Nikon. At the same aperture, the TTArtisan even shows more out of focus in the background, which gives you even more separation from your subject. You don't have to worry about sufficient sharpness with the TTArtisan 75mm f2. This lens is sharp from f2 in the middle and this increases even more if you squeeze it a bit. Well, let's talk about purple fringing. I can see any purple fringing in this image even at f2 in difficult conditions. Great job here, TTArtisan. This lens has quite a lot of flaring in extreme situations. This can be a disadvantage, but can also give artistic charm in certain cases, depending on the photographer. Here you see an example without a lens hood. Here an example with the lens hood attached, and here you see an example of the Nikon 70 to 200mm. This lens also shows some flare, but to a lesser extent. As I already mentioned, this can be seen as both an advantage as an disadvantage. There is absolutely nothing to complain about the autofocus. It is fast and very accurate, even when your subject is moving quickly, as you can see in this image. Because I am a professional painter, I obviously need photos of my paintings. My go-to lens is a Nikon 105mm macro MC-S lens. For fun, I want to test the TTArtisan 75mm f2. The color reproduction of the TTArtisan is very good, but it soon becomes apparent that this lens was not developed for these purposes. There is a distortion of the straight line of the artwork, the so-called pincushion distortion. With the macro lens, these lines have remained much straighter. Also, the sharpness of the TTArtisan in the corners is clearly less than the macro lens. All in all, not a bad result, but as a reproduction lens, I would certainly not use the TTArtisan 75mm f2. And certainly not because of the minimum focus distance of 75 centimeters. You can use the TTArtisan 75mm f2, of course, as a full frame lens on an APS-C crop camera. Here I made a comparison with the Z prime lens from Nikon, the 105mm. Due to the crop of 1.5 on an APS-C camera, you come very close to a field of view of 112.5mm with the TTArtisan to the Nikon 105mm. The image quality is very comparable, but this also shows that the Nikon lens is slightly more sterile in color reproduction. My preference here goes to the TTArtisan. If you use this light lens on a crop camera, like you see here on a Nikon Z50 Mark II, the enormous difference in dimensions is also noticeable compared to the full frame combination Z5 Mark II and 105mm f2.8. I should note that both the full frame combination have built-in stabilization. The TTArtisan 75mm does not have VR, to be clear. 75mm on a full frame camera is a widely usable focal length. Don't think primarily of portrait photography, but also on landscape photography and many other applications. The TTArtisan 75mm f2 is the perfect addition if you have a full frame or APS-C camera. This lens gives great results and performs much better than its price tag suggests. The rendering feels somewhat vintage, but you have the convenience that this lens can be attached to your camera without an external adapter, which keeps the whole thing very compact. In addition, you also have autofocus compared to an old manual lens. This is my first introduction to TTArtisan as a brand, and I have to say that I am amazed by the quality, especially of this lens. With the 75mm f2 you rediscover a certain purity, nostalgia and essence of photography. And I would gladly say it again for less than $200. I hope TTArtisan stays true to the characterful lenses and doesn't go the way of the big brands, sterile and lifeless lenses. Don't get me wrong, there is a time and place for these lenses, but as a daily walk-around lens, I prefer a lens with a bit more character, like this TTArtisan 75mm. If you have any questions about this lens or you already use this lens, please let me know in the comments.